Hi, and welcome to the 54th TiddlyWiki Hangout. I'm Jeremy Ruston, the creator of TiddlyWiki, and today I'm joined by Dave. Would you like to say hi, Dave, and where you're from, and your connection with TiddlyWiki?
Hi, my name is Dave Gifford. I'm living in Mexico City. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I've been working with TiddlyWiki and providing some adaptations and other things since, I don't know, 2006 or so.
Indeed, great to have you here, Dave. And a new person, Eddie. Would you like to say hi, where you're from?
Hi guys, I just really wanted to listen in on what you were doing. It's my first time. I saw the Twitter feed and it came up there, so I said I'd have a look. Yeah, I use the TiddlyWiki. I have used it for some time, mostly for notes and that, but I have some difficulties, which I'm sure I'll get to with the new version and so on, but no, I wouldn't be at the development stage or anything like that. I'm more of a user than anything like that. And I also use it on Dropbox, and I'm calling in from Cork in Ireland, as you can probably tell by the accent. So.
Aha, I don't think we've had anybody from Ireland join a hangout before, so that's good to be able to take another country off on the map. And Eddie, if you do have any questions, do shout out. There's also, if you click the blue button at the top left of the window, there's a chat window, and so quite often during the hangout, people post questions there, so it's not to sort of interrupt the flow. Brilliant, but Eddie, thank you very much for joining us, and you're very welcome. Glad to have you here. Thank you. Mark, would you like to say, oh actually Eddie, I think you'll get, brilliant. Mark, would you like to say hi, where you're from and your connections to TiddlyWiki?
Hi, I'm Mark Robbins. I'm from Detroit, and I've been working on TiddlyWiki interface adaptations for about a month.
And made incredible progress. Mark was here last week on Hangout 53 and showed us some of his stuff, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to show us some more today, Mark. Next, Ton, would you like to say hi and where you're from?
Hi, I'm Ton Gerner from the Netherlands, long-time user of TiddlyWiki, and about half a year working with TiddlyWiki 5 and making some customization guides for it. Indeed, very popular guides too. Well, great to have you all here. As ever, this is what we talk about is is for us to decide, but we'll kick off with a question that Branemir posted to the Q&A feature of Google Hangouts. So I've just selected that question. Since the new address bar navigation with current story sequence, it becomes hard to refresh a wiki. So why not add a home icon or make the title a home link? This would also be useful in the TiddlyDesktop application, which misses a refresh functionality. So I'll just switch to screen sharing if the gods of Google Hangouts are with us, so that we can just have a quick look at what the problem is that Branemir is asking about. Can you see my screen now? Yeah.
So here, well, actually, let's go to tiddlywiki.com. So I go to tiddlywiki.com. I open some recent tiddlers, and now if I press refresh, rather than the expected action of the page resetting itself to the state when I first visited it, I've still got these two tiddlers displayed. And of course, that's because those tiddlers are referenced in this location hash part of the URL. So it's a feature, but it's a feature that can be confusing, and particularly when you're running TiddlyWiki locally and you want to verify that things saved. So Branemir is suggesting, wouldn't it be useful to have a home button? And of course, many TiddlyWiki 5 adaptations do have a home button. It's functionality that's built into the core. But thus far, I've opted to not include the home button here, which is perhaps the obvious place. The other suggestion that Branemir makes is that the title text itself could function as home. The concern I have there is that it's also quite useful for the title to be a link in the expected normal way. So when I click on the title on tiddlywiki.com, it opens the Tiddler About TiddlyWiki. So I had have concerns with that would be introducing a way in which clicking on something that looks like a link doesn't behave like a link, and I think it's valuable for, as far as possible, for TiddlyWiki to behave consistently, because I think that makes it easier to learn. So I guess the status of this at the moment would be that yes, I recognize the problem. I am uncertain of the best solution. I appreciate that adding a home button is one solution, but the other viable solution is simply to turn off this stuff by default. So the consequence of that is that one would still be able to do that, to jump to a specific tiddler, but one would no longer have the business of the address bar changing automatically as we navigate around tiddlers. So to me, this is one of those situations where the features that we have added, which have good rationales and are there for sound reasons, create some complexity. My concern is adding more complexity to resolve that, and I'd regard an additional button here as being 33% more complexity, whereas the alternative is to try and reduce the complexity overall by, in this case, turning the feature off by default. So I'm not really sure, but it's certainly something that we'll need to resolve before we move out of beta, which will add a bit more focus to it. Any comments from anybody else on that?
Yeah, what about a home icon up in the top left corner, like in a top bar?
Yes, I tried that once actually as well, and not bad, I thought, but it does add. I think putting something in the top left, because of the way that, at least in left to right languages, we read the page from top left, it means that it's really the prime position, the top left, where I'm pointing. And so that was one of the deliberate decisions here, was that hello there, the title of the opening tiddler, would be the top left thing on the page, so that the eye doesn't need to scan over anything else before hitting this opening title, which I was regarding as, you know, the most important element of the page. So that logic may be wrong, but that's where I am so far. So I mean, it's very easy to put a home button in the top left there, and it's the sort of thing that probably it might make sense to make into a plugin so that people can experiment with it. But as I say, it's basically the same argument as putting it here. It's additional complexity, particularly by introducing a new location for people to visually parse and scan. And so the question is, might it not be simpler just to get rid of or turn off by default the troublesome behavior that actually stems from this automatic updating of the URL?
I'm in favor of default no permalinking.
Yes, I'm increasingly getting that way, I must say. I think it's important for, I mean, the main end user expectation that it's designed to support is the ability to use the back button to go back after navigating between tiddlers. So the reason why I was interested in that is that often when I put TiddlyWiki in front of people, they'll click on a few links and then they'll try and hit the back button. Now what and there is a setting that enables that to work here under advanced settings. So if I sort of put it to update history, then each time I do one of these navigations, I'll add a history event and say going back will unwind the stack. But what we found when we had that turned on by default was that people, I guess people on the Hangout, so therefore maybe experienced TiddlyWiki users, didn't like the way that if you did any amount of navigation within TiddlyWiki, then your back history would get ridiculously complex and very hard to refer back to. So that's for people who like using, you know, the history to go back to where they were. So I think all this experience suggests that actually both of these are advanced features that should ship like that. So yes, I must remember that. Let me do what I normally do and just make a note tiddler.
As far as the general issue of advanced versus novice users, have you considered doing, just use a CSS thing to get rid of whatever controls you deem as advanced?
I prefer the idea that people who want the advanced features should add them through plugins, so that rather than them being switched off, so that they learn. I mean, that's the most fundamental way to extend TiddlyWiki, is to sort of take an off-the-shelf plugin. So I like the idea that I think TiddlyWiki can make a reasonable pitch at being one presentation that works for all, what's the word, non-advanced users. I'm not sure what the tactful way of saying that is. But I think it's very hard for one product to meet the needs of all of the advanced users. So basically anybody who gets to the point where their appetite for TiddlyWiki pushes them into the advanced user category, basically they're going to have to do customization, because the very definition of an advanced user is wanting something slightly different than the other people. So do you see what I mean? I'm suggesting that philosophically the easiest thing to achieve, and so therefore we might try and do something a bit different later, is to try and make something that works really well for first-time users who are first experiencing TiddlyWiki, i.e. visiting tiddlywiki.com and exploring it and trying to find out what's going on, and make the path by which you learn how to extend it and enable more advanced features to be as easy to discover as possible. And we'll talk about that a bit later, actually, about the plugin library. So I think a reasonable, a nice thing would be for there to be a power user plugin that pulls together a whole load of these really obvious enhancements that we keep seeing. So if I, for instance, look at Ton's work, oh, no, that was a bad example, and I didn't see what I expected, but I was hoping to see, where is it? Was Ton, I'm looking for an example of one of your wikis with a close others button, and I was just going to give that as an example along with the home button that you can see here of enhancements that seem to be very common for the wikis, TiddlyWikis that I've seen that are optimized for the user, so to speak. So I think bundling those things together is a reasonable approach, and making it easy, therefore, for people to choose for themselves whether they want to be an advanced user or a, as I say, don't know the polite word, an intermediate user or a less advanced user.
Yeah, I was talking about features or controls that are kind of borderline, yeah. Or you could establish like a convention where you mark in your element class, you have a specific class that deems this control as advanced, and then a future plugin writer who's writing a control can use that convention to go, okay, let's drop in this CSS that takes away all those.
I do see what you mean, and that is an approach that we use in some places. So, for instance, the read-only theme uses CSS to hide the edit button and the 3 buttons here. But obviously, what we're not doing here is the fundamental part of what you're suggesting, to establish a convention for a CSS class that is present on the body when TiddlyWiki is in advanced mode. I mean, my experience of doing this CSS hack is that I did it right at the beginning when there was no other means of customizing these buttons. But now we've got quite rich non-CSS ways of controlling them. So I'm not absolutely sure that it's the best approach. but the TiddlyWiki approach is very analogous, and it's to have, rather than a CSS class, a state tiddler. So I don't know if you'll have seen this, but there's a if I turn the sidebar off and on, and then search for system tiddlers with the word sidebar in, you can see I've got a tiddler here called state sidebar, and it's currently set to yes. If I edit it to no, you'll see that the sidebar disappears. So this is, and that happens because it's possible in wikitext to write wikitext that's conditional on the value of a tiddler. And doing that gives us a bit more flexibility as to enabling and disabling things. So, I mean, for instance, you can have multiple states of these state tiddlers. Doesn't just need to be a binary yes and no value. So I'm not sure if that made sense. It was agreeing that that's a useful technique, showing you that it's how we're using it already. But the tension is with TiddlyWiki's own way of doing that kind of customization.
Right.
So let me flick back and I'll say that we've done that question. Now, there was a couple of things I was quite keen to show. Before I show the things that I've been doing for the next TiddlyWiki release, I wanted to draw your attention to this, which I've been tweeting about and posted enthusiastically to the group about. So it's tw5.scholars.tiddlyspot.com. It's by Daniele. It's an attempt to put together an edition of TiddlyWiki for scholars, and I think it's a stunning piece of work. He's added features that we've seen elsewhere. So, for instance, he's got the Close Others button, the Clone button, which are again the kinds of things that I think of as your classic TiddlyWiki 5 advanced features. Here we're looking at a entry about William Shakespeare, and the cool thing is the way underneath we've got these tabs of subsidiary information, which I think this is something that I think Dave's been interested in the past. What do we have? The relationship stuff. So these are the children of this tiddler. A linked idea, by the look of that there. Biography, which is a separate tiddler that's been pulled in. List of publications, list of comments, notes, and the one I really like is the quotes that really work well. Oh yeah, and there's that idea that we were looking at. Can use the X to close the thing, and everywhere we went just there's a plus as well, and if I click the plus, then in line I get the opportunity to add a new one of the items. Not sure if it'll let me add an empty one. It did let me add an empty one. Really amazing, I think. He uses tags beautifully, so with really nice icons that seem, what's the word, appropriate. I like monochrome icons in this context. And when you see the tiddler icons here, I think they just they work really nicely. We've got a great example of a table of contents where, unlike the one on TiddlyWiki.com, this one is automatically generated. So it automatically pulls out all of the authors and their publications alongside each author. We've got some, I guess that's course, which I'm not sure if my French is good enough for. And this, I think, is a breakdown, a sort of breakdown of concepts in philosophy, but again related to people's work. Sorry, I think I've probably not described that at all well from a philosophical point of view. But from a TiddlyWiki point of view, the thing that's cool about it is it's a table of contents that's generated automatically. one really nice idea is having the most recent tiddlers immediately below the open tiddlers, which I think works really well. There's not really much, what's the word? There's not much graphics dividing them up, but I quite like the way that just white space seems like, and the difference in appearance of having the close buttons seems to be sufficient to separate the two areas. So that was it really. Just wanted to share my excitement at this, and obviously curious as to how it appeals to other people.
It looks very professional. It's by Alberto and not Daniela.
Oh, of course. I'm so sorry. There you go. Jeremy, the least reliable witness of what's happening. Thank you very much, Tom. So anyway, wanted to draw your attention to that, and I guess the other thing to add is this is exactly the sort of thing that I would like to wrap up as an off-the-shelf edition for TiddlyWiki, so that visitors to TiddlyWiki.com can start their own TiddlyWiki for scholars, with 2 or 3 clicks. Would be a good goal, I think. Okay. Any questions, comments about any of that?
I just think it looks really cool. I hadn't noticed the part on the bottom of the tiddler. I'll have to check that out.
It's pretty stunning, isn't it? I think the thing that's cool is that it demonstrates a mastery, obviously, of TiddlyWiki and wikitext, but also great visual design and great aesthetics. And that's pretty unusual, We get a lot of stuff that is one thing or the other, but not a lot of stuff that's both. Okay, so the next thing I had to show you was you may remember from the last couple of Hangouts we've been talking about the remaining work for TiddlyWiki 5 before we come out of beta, that it's emerged over the last couple of weeks that the single biggest item is the need to have a much more user-friendly upgrade process, which was capable of automatically upgrading any plugins that the user was using. So this is something that's been on the roadmap for a long time, along with a whole load of other stuff, but it's getting more and more obvious to me that it's the big blocker, because the present 5.13 scenario for doing upgrades requires far too much understanding of what's actually going on behind the scenes. So this is work that's been on my plate for ages, really. It turns out one of the things that was blocking me was my own misconceptions about it, that I was envisaging that the first thing that I needed to do was to establish the plugin library, which I thought meant ensuring that all of the available plugins for TiddlyWiki are hosted somewhere, so that TiddlyWiki in the field can consult the plugin library and extract the plugins that it needs. What I realized was actually that I can, and the reason why that's difficult is because at the moment we don't even have HTTPS on TiddlyWiki.com, and if we're going to engineer something new around plugin storage, I'd want to hit that, because right now there is a small chance that somebody trying to download TiddlyWiki.com on dodgy Wi-Fi, an adversary could substitute a dangerous version of TiddlyWiki, a hacked version of TiddlyWiki. So I was getting myself into a bit of a bother where suddenly the simple need to provide a reliable, user-friendly upgrade process was trailing off into needing to redesign and rebuild and somehow pay for a whole bunch of new infrastructure for TiddlyWiki. And then I realized that I was thinking about it all wrong. So let me show you what I've come up with now. So this is, I'm looking at upgrade.html, which come 5.14 will be hosted at tiddlywiki.com/upgrade.html. And you can see that it doesn't present itself as a TiddlyWiki, but the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice the chevron at the top right, which unerringly indicates that it is a TiddlyWiki. But let's just use it without exploring how it's built. So I click the button, I get a prompt to browse for a file. I could have also dragged and dropped the file. I'll take a really old version. Yeah, so this is from April of my personal note TiddlyWiki. So in that comes, I get immediately a display of all of the tiddlers that are in the TiddlyWiki that I selected. And you can see in the status column that it's treated some of them differently. So it's automatically unchecked the core plugin, because obviously we've already got the core plugin and we don't want the old one. And you can see for the full screen plugin and the Snow White and Vanilla themes, it's automatically upgraded the 5.09 versions of those plugins that were in the wiki that we opened with the updated 5.14 ones. And then there are my the actual tiddlers. So now if I click upgrade, it then imports those tiddlers, and I just press save to, I'll save it as update.html to save it. And now when I open it, bang, I've got my upgraded wiki. So how many clicks is that? I'll refresh it. And it's one click to select, second click to choose the file, another click to do the upgrade. I've already lost count. I think there was 3, wasn't it? And then 4 to do the save, and then 5 to actually it looks like we're going up to 7 there. Anyway, it's considerably simpler than the old process, and has this desirable side effect of updating all of the plugins that are in the library. So that's the basic functionality. As it says on the front page, if you were using this on TiddlyWiki.com and you dragged a personal wiki to it, the wiki still doesn't leave your server. It still doesn't leave your machine. It stays entirely within the browser. So, but still, that's might still feel funny to some people, but you can just download the upgrade.html file, which is completely self-contained, and then run your updates whilst you are offline. Okay, any comments on that? That's the user experience. So in a way, that's the most important thing to talk about, is whether that's a sufficiently easy to use and sufficiently flexible user interface for most people to handle upgrading to new versions.
That's great, Jeremy. That's a big step forward.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you like it. Let me show you then behind the scenes how it's done. So the first thing is, as I indicated, this is actually a TiddlyWiki. If we go into Control Panel, we can see it's a TiddlyWiki with a new plugin in it called TiddlyWiki/upgrade. And it's that plugin that provides the user interface that you see here. So all of this, this special panel and so on. But beyond that user interface, there are some changes to TiddlyWiki itself, which are actually easier to show you, not on the upgrade edition, but on the normal index.html. So now if I try and do an ordinary import, and let's again take one of my old notes files, we get the screen that we just saw. So what we just saw as the upgrade user interface is actually the import user interface. And so now at this point, I can select and deselect which which tiddlers I want to be imported. And if the TiddlyWiki that I imported includes any plugins, then it will try to upgrade them. In this situation, it doesn't have access to the plugin library, so it just suppresses bringing in, it suppresses bringing it in because it's got the old one, in fact. It's already got the most up-to-date version of those plugins. Sorry, I hope that makes sense. So I can then either cancel, and if I cancel, you get a slightly misleading prompt. Do you want to delete that tiddler? And then bang, it's gone. If I then drag the guy back in and instead do an import, afterwards we get an import report, which was basically the same, I think, as we had in 5.013. And so from here, I can click on the individual items that were imported to inspect them. So that's the relationship between the improvements to the upgrade functionality, improvements to the import functionality and the new upgrade functionality. So we'll dive into the internals a little bit, first looking at how the import process is done, and then we'll finally jump over to this custom user interface. And obviously this custom user interface is employing techniques that could be useful in TiddlyWikis that have nothing to do with upgrading. It's quite a nice general purpose technique. So let's refresh this guy again. If I start doing another import, you can see that it's created a tiddler called $/import. And it's worth just going behind the scenes to have a look at what's in there. So you can see, well, it's actually very hard to see. Let me, yeah, that makes it a little bit easier. We've got the fields we'd expect for a plugin. It's got a type, and it's got a plugin type of import. So it's not a real plugin. It's not a normal plugin. It's a plugin with the type import. It's also got a bunch of fields that these ones here, selection dash and then the name of a tiddler, are used for recording the state of those checkboxes. So if I uncheck is encrypted, you can see here that yeah, uncheck is encrypted, and then reopen. That's annoying, it closes. You can now see that there's unchecked against is encrypted, and if I reselect it and again reopen the guy, you can now see is encrypted is checked. So that's how we're doing the state of the checkboxes. These fields that are message dash and then the name of a tiddler, those are the messages that are displayed alongside the tiddlers that have had some processing applied to them. And then if I zip into the body of it, you can see that the text of the import tiddler is just like every other plugin, is a list of tiddlers in an array. And even the binary tiddlers are in there as base 64. So what's going on here is that we're using this import tiddler as a kind of temporary holding area. So all of the text of all of these tiddlers is all embedded inside the $/import. But you can see from the italicized text here that those tiddlers don't actually exist in this wiki. So it's only at the point when I click the import button that it then reaches into what I'm calling a pending import tiddler and extracts the tiddlers that are selected. So as soon as I do that import, then the lnug talkie tiddler stopped being a missing tiddler. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So this same approach I intend to use for search and replace, because search and replace has exactly the same characteristic, that we want to make a bunch of changes and then present them to the user for the user to choose which ones they wish to apply. So the plan is to add the ability to look at the differences between the current value of a tiddler, if any, and the tiddler displayed in this table. So this would then be the screen that you use to review a search and replace operation and indicate which individual items you want to be replaced. Now, behind the scenes, there's one other interesting part of the mechanism, and it's a new type of module that's been introduced called an upgrader. We'll look at the simpler one first, which is the system upgrader. So this one, it's given the opportunity to inspect new tiddlers as they are added to this pending import. And I should perhaps have explained that I can keep adding tiddlers to the pending import tiddler. So if I drag in a completely different wiki, bang, then those tiddlers from, which in this case is all those songs like Big Yellow Taxi, join the other ones. So, and it's at the time that we add them that we invoke these upgrader modules. This one is just checking for those two tiddler titles, and if it gets them, then it suppresses those tiddlers, and it does that by basically setting the tiddler to null and assigning a message. We've got additional complexity on the message because it needs to be translatable, and that's why it's got that get string thing going on. The upgrader module for plugins does two things. It goes through all the incoming tiddlers. It first checks to see for each incoming tiddler if the upgrade library contains a newer version, and if it does, it uses that. And then if it wasn't in the upgrade library, it checks to see if there's an existing tiddler that's a newer version, and if there is, then it suppresses the incoming one. So the bit I need to explain here is this upgrade library tiddler. Now that upgrade library tiddler is present in the upgrader. So if I go in here, look at the system tab, you can see upgrade library. And it displays itself as being a plugin that contains all of these shadow tiddlers. So you may recognize these as these are all the plugins in TiddlyWiki's core library. So we've got the themes at the bottom, then the plugins, and then languages at the top. And if we go and have a look inside, we can see it's structured just as you'd expect, like a plugin, with each individual tiddler in JSON. But of course, the complexity is that the text of some tiddlers is itself JSON. So we've got sort of JSON on JSON with lots of, therefore, encoding happening. But that's fine, it works. So that one tiddler contains the latest versions of all of those plugins. And so that's why when we look at this upgrade code, you can see we've got this thing, get library tiddler. So it reads the upgrade library tiddler, which has a fixed name if it hasn't already, and then it simply reaches in for a tiddler of the indicated title. So the idea is that we will be able to add other upgrader modules. So if in the future we made a change to TiddlyWiki that had an impact on people's content, and obviously the goal is to not do that at all, but if we got to the point where it was unavoidable, we could write a custom upgrader module which did any necessary massaging of content. As an example, some of you may have noticed that TiddlyWiki rather stupidly gets one of its system tags wrong. So all the system tags are lowercase word tags and then a camel case word for what type of tag it is, apart from stylesheet, which uses lowercase. And so that's an example of a change that if we changed it, we could just introduce uppercase stylesheet as an alternative, but we could switch and then make a little upgrader that looks for that old tag and automatically transforms it to the new format tag. So I think that's a very useful capability. I still don't want to make incompatible changes. That still, makes life confusing for people. But having the ability to mitigate the impact of those changes is extremely useful, I think. So, any questions, comments so far?
Mike reached and Dave is joined again.
Aha, so I need to let some people in. Show Dave in broadcast. Eddie. Mario, hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, good to see you.
Cool.
Glad you were able to join us. Obviously not seen you for ages.
Yeah.
There's a Charlie. Would you like to just type in the chat window? Oh, it's Charlie Hitzelberger. I think your name is familiar. I think we've not seen you on a Hangout, but I think you've been on the groups. Isn't that right? I believe that is right. So let me click show broadcast on poor Charlie. Charlie, hello. Never mind. So just while we're on a quick break, Eddie's got a question. How do I get WYSIWYG text? I want to copy a text file to TiddlyWiki ensures it's left in the exact same format as the originally copied file, e.g. 80 columns wide. And so we'll come to that in a moment. And Charlie's saying that he's using TiddlyWiki to generate documentation for a fourth that I'm doing for the pet. Do you mean the Commodore pet? That's amazing. A fourth light language for the Commodore PET 2001. Wow, Charlie, that gets my vote as the most amazing thing that I've discovered today. Yep, back in 1977, I too first saw a TRS-80. I hankered after a PET, but could never afford one. But I did do a lot of work on fourth in the mid-80s, like you, being fascinated by it. And gosh, I noticed 6502 assembler. 6502 assembler is, well, I'd have written TiddlyWiki in 6502 assembler if I could have done. Yes, try pedal. And of course, I'm a great fan of the ARM chip, and I see the ARM chip as, you know, very much in terms of it's the work of somebody who learned everything they knew from the 6502 and obviously loved it. Okay, so let me get over this. Let me do the very last bit of this upgrade discussion quickly, and then we'll move on to Eddie's question and do some more show and tells. So the only other bit I wanted to show you was how what I called the one-shot user interface was created. So there's a couple of aspects to that. There's firstly the fact that when I drag a file in here, I've still got the upgrade plugin in. And so how do we stop the upgrade plugin from appearing in the user's final upgraded wiki? And if we go into here's the upgrade plugin files, you can see that one of them is the save filter. So this is the filter that's used to determine which tiddlers should be included in a save operation. And just for the upgrader, we're explicitly excluding the upgrade library and excluding this upgrade plugin itself. So that's how that part is done. The main user interface is a tiddler called Upgrade Wizard that's tagged story backdrop. That's something I added, I think, last week, which if we look at the DOM, actually maybe open a tiddler as well. So there's a tiddler. You can see that within the story river, we've got a section called story backdrop, and it's that's got the upgrade wizard in it. So this is a way of adding things to the top of the story column. You can also add them to the bottom so that they scroll with the story column. And I think it's quite a nice technique because it lets you kind of have your cake and eat it. When we're at this point where there's no tiddlers open, it's just an HTML website, and there's no particular reason for anybody to treat it any differently than any other website that they encounter. But if there were, let's bring a file in. But if I open a tiddler, and that's not a very good one, then you can see that it's still TiddlyWiki behind the scenes. So it means that we can create a conventional looking website that has tiddler links. The consequence of clicking on a tiddler link will open essentially a footnote underneath the rest of the site. Anyway, I want to explore more what we can do with this approach, but one of the things I mentioned before is actually using it for TiddlyWiki.com, so that when you come to TiddlyWiki.com, there's the above the fold part is a much more normal sort of product website that with nice chunky horizontal segments explains its proposition and has a big green getting started button on it. So that was basically it, just to show you something about how the upgrade stroke import itself is done and how we built that one-shot user interface and the possibilities for using that for other things. Any comments or questions before we move on from that? Okay, I can see more people who have been added. Chris Delorio. Hello, Chris. You added me on Google Plus, I think, earlier in the week, so I recognise your name. There's somebody showing up as behviour, whose name I don't recognise. behviour, if you'd like to type into the chat window, just to give us an indication of what you're interested in, that would be very helpful. You've come here to talk about TiddlyWiki, I assume. You won't be able to talk yet. Nathan's asking, is this the most people who've ever had to hang out? And I think it is. I think this is 10, which is the maximum. So yes, that's quite cool. I think it was last week or the week before that we had 2 or 3 of us, so it was quite cool.
It's certainly a lot more people than we've had in a while.
Yes, I think so. I think so. Well, this Mario coming back has encouraged everybody else.
Behviour mentioned that he's French.
And you're interested in TiddlyWiki, behviour. That was the main thing we were trying to establish. I'll leave him out until we get a further response. Let me now pick up Eddie's question earlier. Eddie, you're asking about WYSIWYG text. But it sounds like you mean WYSIWYG plain text. Is that correct? Or do you mean like Microsoft Word text? Eddie, I don't know if you can hear me.
He responds in the chat window.
Oh, I can't see. Oh, yes, okay. So that's quite an easy one then. Let's find a RFC. So these are the most famous plain text documents that we come across on the internet. Get it in, I want to get it in text format. There we go. And now we're going to paste that into a new tiddler. And for that kind of content, the easy way is to use / to give us monospace text. And, not too far. And then the only issue we see is needing the screen to be wide enough. So if I needed it to work on a screen this narrow, then we would need to adjust the font size. Let me show you how that's done.
Yeah, or you could make the story river a little bit wider with the control panel.
Yeah. I guess either of those. So I think if we just say we'll give that a style sheet tag. Does that look reasonable? Yeah, not bad. So that approach works great for monospace text. If what you've got is something like poetry, so I guess we better find an example of an epic. Beowulf, but I don't suppose we actually have the text of it here, do we? Awesome. Okay, try and get to the actual poem. So here's a chunk of Beowulf, and it's been quite weirdly laid out, actually. I'm not sure how effectively we're going to be able to do this. And this time I'm wrapping it in triple double quotes. That causes it to still be formatted as wikitext, as you can see by the inappropriate wiki link there, but to respect the line breaks. So for those situations where you want to write ordinary non-monospaced text and to have the normal poetry line break behavior, you use triple double quotes, and for monospaced it's triple backtick, as it's called, which is bottom left on my keyboard, but I understand not quite as convenient on some European keyboards. Eddie, was that helpful? Great, Eddie. I just seen that too. That's great. Okay. Now, I'm taking things in a funny... must be careful not to get out too far out of order. Mark's asked an interesting question there. Yeah, let's just carry on in reverse order. I'm sorry about this, guys. So Mark is asking what needs to be done to certain SVG files so they render as SVG elements instead of IMG. So what he's talking about is the odd way if I look at certain images, so for instance this guy, and go into edit it, you can see it's a full SVG document. So sorry, it's an XML document containing an SVG image. And if we inspect it, you can see it is indeed rendered as an image. Meanwhile, these SVG images there, if I inspect them, it's an SVG element that's naked within the page without being wrapped in an image tag. The main difference between the two approaches is that an SVG image inside an image tag is kind of like an iframe. You don't get any control over how it's displayed. You're just handing a rectangular area of the screen over to that other piece of content, and the browser renders it in that rectangular area for you. Whereas these images, by virtue of just being SVG nodes within the document, allows us to apply CSS rules. So for instance here you can see that there's a CSS rule, tiddler controls button SVG with a fill color. So if I change that fill color, yippee, the buttons change color. And that wouldn't be possible if those buttons were embedded as image tags. So there's some documentation about this, which I guess I should point you at, which is in this section using SVG, which draws a distinction between SVG tiddlers and SVG elements. So I think the question that Mark was asking was, what do we do? How do we convert an SVG image file so that we can use it as a standalone SVG element? And to show you that, let me show you the workflow that I use for creating TiddlyWiki icons. I use a Mac application called Sketch. I would love to use an open source equivalent, but in my mind there isn't yet a decent enough graphics editor, and I don't begrudge paying these guys for their quite awesome work. So you can see here in Sketch I've got laid out all the different bits of artwork. Sketch has this facility where you have things called slices, which define a rectangular area of the page and allow that rectangular area to be simultaneously exported in multiple formats. So we've got here, for instance, where that's being emitted in SVG format. These guys that are ultimately going to be used as fav icons are spat out at various small pixel sizes as PNGs. So in the case of the upgrade image that I just added, if I run the export, bing bang, it then spits out all those individual files into this slices directory. And if we have a look at the download button, Sorry, where is it? Oh, that one, dropzone.svg. So if I open that in Chrome, will Chrome open it? Yeah. And we inspect it, we can, actually it's probably not the most sensible thing, let me just open it in the text editor. So if I open it in the text editor, you can see that it's a full-blown XML file. So to turn this into a SVG image, we'll copy just the bits between the two SVG tags. And actually, no, I'm going to do this in here. So I was going to copy those out, but I'll delete the bits we don't need. Get rid of the XML piece. Get rid of, there's a version attribute, XML namespace attributes, and some attributes added by my graphics editor. We don't need those. We can get rid of that comment. We can actually get rid of the title tag, description, and defs. All of those aren't necessary. And they're using a G tag, which is a group, to group together two paths. In fact, we don't need that either. So we can, oh yes we do. We need it for the even odd fill rule, but we'll take all the other attributes out. And the reason why we're taking the other attributes out, including color, is so that this image will inherit the color settings from the page where it is. So the path element, also we don't need the ID, we don't need the fill, and we don't need that special attribute that Sketch has added. And we can just, right, the other thing I've done is I've closed up all of the line breaks. The reason for that is the problem that we've long had with extraneous line breaks introducing paragraph tags, which gets TiddlyWiki confused. So for the moment, the easiest way to deal with that is just to remove the line breaks. So now I've copied that to the clipboard, and then I create a new tiddler in TiddlyWiki, paste that in, and biff, it works. Hooray. And if we do an inspect element, we can see that it is indeed an SVG element directly contained within a paragraph tag with no intermediate image element. So the steps that you just saw there, let me rewind out of them, are somewhat dependent upon the application that you use to generate the SVG image. And obviously, a massively complicated SVG image, it would be a real pain in the neck to do that manually, and one would probably make a mistake. But what this technique is really useful for is these small icons, because it's only small icons that you want to recolor. So for instance, in TiddlyWiki.com, we've got things like this guy, but that firmly belongs in an image tag because it is a self-contained image and we don't need to recolor it according to the surroundings. Does that make sense, Mark? There's my very... Yes, Inkscape. I wish Inkscape was nicer. Its model of operation is amazing. So the way it does round tripping to SVG is really cool. But I just find it a nightmare to use. And of course, being a Mac user, annoyingly, native applications are often preferable in performance terms because they have access to hardware acceleration and so on. That makes them a lot more pleasant to use. Mario is pointing out that sometimes you need to adjust the view box.
Yeah. With Inkscape, I mentioned there is a special export possibility that strips most of the metadata, because also Inkscape adds a lot of, let's say, program specific settings. So it stores some state with the SVG image. So that's why there is an export which strips most of it. If the viewport isn't set right, the browser can still display it in a nice way. But if you want to do some hand editing like you did, then you should have a proper viewport with 00 something. because otherwise you get for all the groups you get what is this, a transform formula, and it makes the, let's say, hand editing more difficult.
Yeah.
But in normal cases, I have to install it with Windows at the moment, and then I can say how the export needs to be done.
Yeah, Mark's just commented, chalk it up to my SVG inexperience. Don't feel too bad. SVG, it's really odd. It's been around for a long time, but it's really only quite recently, I think, that lots of web developers like me have started to get their heads around it, and one experience with other ways that images are produced on the web doesn't really help you that much with SVG, because it's much more an extension of HTML to encompass geometric shapes than it is a conventional graphics format. Eddie was just signing off mentioning that he's going to set up a public TiddlyWiki on a Raspberry Pi, which is to be applauded, Eddie. I hope that works out, and I hope you'll share your experiences with us. Now, let me just finally go back to Charlie. So, Charlie posted, you posted the Commodore PET 4th work that you'd been doing, but you also posted a question, which was still struggling with automatically setting the style sheet. Oh, I keep scrolling. And there are a couple of words that don't tiddle well in the glossary. Okay, so let's see if we can. Okay. So the words that don't tiddle well in the glossary presumably are the ones that contain double square brackets. Is that right, Charlie? Okay. Okay, so that $greater than pad, so you'd like to be able to use that as the title of a tiddler. Yeah. And the issue is that I can do that, but the issue presumably is that I can't link to it. Is that right? Oh, no, that seems to work. So what's the problem with a tiddler with that title, Charlie? At the moment, not quite sure that I understand what the problem is. Gosh, this is familiar. Wow. Wow. Well, I'm just so proud to have created something that is useful for documenting the late 70s home computer revolution, having been an enthusiastic participant in the mid-80s personal computer scene. Okay, it displays in italics and says the tiddler doesn't exist. It doesn't for me. Do you mean that it displays it in italics if we don't? No? Charlie, I think we need another example. Can I see one of these examples? Sorry, Charlie, I'm probably being a bit slow. So we've got a $greater than pad as a title. So did you fix them by? No, I can't see. Okay, Charlie, we'll come back. Let me just. I mean, you keep going and upload the changes. I'm just going to whiz back to see if we've missed any other questions in here. Oh, Charlie's other question was struggling with automatically setting the style sheet. And great, that's all there was. So setting the style sheet, let's just have a look at what you've got here. Okay, so all the style sheets you've got going on at the moment are included within plugins. It doesn't look like you've got a custom style sheet. So let's go and make a custom style sheet. We create a tiddler that we tags style sheet, and as we were noted earlier, it's inconsistently all in lowercase. We'll put a rule in like h1 background color red, and that didn't work because of, yes, that's a better one. There we go. So I've set the background color of all paragraphs to red. So that's basically all there is to it. Create an ordinary tiddler, give it that tag style sheet, and then type CSS within it. And that's normally all you need to do. The custom style sheet winds up in the wiki, but it doesn't activate at load. Going into the style tiddler and selecting it works. Okay, so now let me do a refresh then. Okay, so here we go. We've got the link to $pad, and it's not working. And it thinks that the tiddler doesn't exist. So let's just check whether it's appearing here. Right, so I mean, on the face of it, the target tiddler doesn't exist, and that's the reason why the link to it is italicized. Is that the case, Charlie? Charlie's pasted some code here. I'm not quite sure that I can. Charlie, can I suggest that we move this one into the groups? I think that's a bit too much for me to read in this context here, and I'd like to understand properly what the problem is. Are you happy if to do that, Charlie?
Or probably a GitHub issue, something like this?
Conceivably, I mean, or in the TiddlyWiki dev group. It's just literally that I'm currently not properly understanding what the problem is, and the I can see that what you've pasted is some JSON, but I'm not really sure. Yes, Charlie, would you like to screen share? That would work. Whilst you're getting the screen sharing set up, I'm going to answer Mark's question. And I'll unshare my screen just in case that gives us more bandwidth to play with. Charlie's put your screen up. There's a icon towards the top left of the Google Hangouts page that's like a green television with a white arrow on it that tooltips a screen share. So Mark's asking, where do I go in the core to disable updates on every keystroke when editing a tiddler like a style sheet? Sometimes the lag makes me typo a lot. Well, that's interesting. In one of the recent versions, we added some timeouts, which were supposed to alleviate the problem of slow typing. There's currently those timeouts. Basically, the timeout is how long you need to not type for before it attempts to process what you typed so far. And if I won't screen share because that'll confuse Charlie, who's about to put up his screen. But basically, that number is in the code and it's not configurable at the moment. It could be, but I suspect it's not actually the right fix because you know, what you're reporting is that the editing functionality of TiddlyWiki is making you typo, and yeah, it's not. Well, I should be clear as well that it's intrinsic to how TiddlyWiki works that when you type into a text box, the update happens automatically and continuously. So the old TiddlyWiki classic way of working, whereby what you typed into a tiddler in edit mode stayed in the DOM text boxes until you pressed done, that can't happen in TiddlyWiki 5 because TiddlyWiki 5 has this thing that the refresh mechanism means that it may need to reassemble the DOM at any time. So that means that we can't keep state in the DOM, which means that we have to keep state in tiddlers. So that's all quite complicated stuff. But oh, you're on 5.09. Oh, well, forget it, I'm afraid, Mark. You need to be on 5.013. I can't offer any support on old versions. I mean, 5.09 is broken because there's been 5 or 6 months of work on it since. I mean, feel free to hack on it, but of course, if you do, the trouble is, again, you won't really be able to share what you've done with other folks. Is there a reason, Mark, why you're still on 5.09?
Yes, I want to make my transition off of it eventually, but I want to let you get to wherever you need to be, so I can only do it once, hopefully. Okay. So I started out here and I'm stuck here for a while.
Right. Okay. I mean, in practice, there are going to be new versions of TiddlyWiki all the time, and so even when we come out of beta, there's going to be new improvements, new features, bug fixes, and so on. So the routine of updating to a new version of TiddlyWiki, you know, if you want to be sure that you can take advantage of the latest stuff generated by the community, you need to be on the latest version. The thing that will change when we get out of beta is that we won't do any more breaking changes. But as I was showing you earlier with the upgrade process, I think now we've got a process that means that we can mitigate any upgrade problems. So in practice, there shouldn't be, in the future, there shouldn't be problems with upgrading. I'd strongly recommend you to try upgrading to 5.014 when it comes out, partly because that gives us an opportunity to try out the new upgrade mechanism. Okay, Mark, so hopefully did that help? Charlie, how are you getting on with screen sharing? I can see the screen share icon on your avatar, but it doesn't. I'm not actually seeing a screen. Is anybody else seeing Charlie's screen?
Yes, I'm seeing it in the chat window. He says he would be prepared. But I've got
it now as well. Awesome.
I think you need to select him. Otherwise, because if we say something, Google will switch to our avatar, and his code will be only in the thumbnail.
Yeah. Okay, so now I've highlighted Charlie. Do remind me when Charlie's finished if I forget to unclick it, because that's the problem we've had in the past. But Charlie, that's great. We can all see. Over to you.
Does he have a microphone?
Charlie's at a heavy metal concert.
Yeah. We need all the titles.
All right, Sammy, we got it. Shacked up with some babe over in Whiting.
She left work tonight and took him home.
2 hours ago, her boss. I owe you. All right. They just spotted a car outside her house.
Does she run with anybody in the area?
No, none that we could find. No family either.
All right, have somebody sit on the car, tell the police that nobody moves till we get there. We'll go first thing in the morning. Your cousin still got his truck.
Mm-hmm.
Call him, tell him we need him.
Charlie? Charlie, sorry, I'm muting you because all we were getting is either the TV or the most exciting background that we've ever had on a Hangout. Are you? Should we try? Charlie? Now we've lost the screen share as well. Ah, great, back. Charlie, do you want us to try talking again? Okay, that's still too much background noise.
I think probably there is a movie running on the same PC.
Yeah. Charlie, not to worry. Do you want to get your microphone issues resolved? I think there's Dave had some stuff to show us, so we could come back to you after Dave's shown us his update, if that's okay. So Charlie, we'll try you again. Or do you think you're ready now?
That's funny. He says it's his fan. Yeah, it would be nice to have a fan like this.
Okay, so Charlie's ready as long as he doesn't have to talk. So that's great, Charlie. Go for it. I will endeavour to speak aloud what I think you're showing us, and then you can correct us in the chat window. So it looks like you're running the Node.js edition for a start, and I can see you've just dumped out a tiddler called theme or stheme, $:/theme. Wow. Charlie, hang on. You've already shown me something that's, I think, not quite right. So you've got a tiddler called $:/theme that you're setting to the title of two tiddlers. You've got themes TiddlyWiki vanilla and config default palette in there. That's not correct. The $:/theme tiddler just contains the name of the current theme. And so if we go into system $:/theme, you can see there's the title of it. If I change that to vanilla.
Tell me you're not screen sharing.
Oh! That's always, of course, what I do. Right, so what I was trying to show you there was that your understanding of how $:theme works isn't correct. $:theme contains the name of the plugin that contains the current theme. And so if I edit it here by putting in the name of a different theme plugin, then that changes the theme. What you've tried to do is to put a list of tiddler titles in there. That's not how you create a style sheet. If you want to create a custom style sheet, you create a tiddler with the tag $:/tags style sheet, and you put your CSS in there. Oop. Like that. So that's the first thing. Does that make sense? Now I can see that Charlie's Charlie, I think you may be, Charlie's question here is, suppose I want to select vanilla with the blue theme color. So there's two different mechanisms going on here. There's the theme, which is and we can see it here, the name of the theme tiddler, and then there's.
Sorry, did you unselect Charlie? Because otherwise we get a thumbnail from you.
Yeah. Right. So sorry. Let's try again. So that means that the last demo I did, you didn't see either, I imagine.
I don't know. We saw it, but maybe it depends how Google
I see.
records
Yeah,
it.
that's what they record. Yeah. So Charlie's saying, suppose I want to select vanilla theme with the blue theme color, and what I was just showing was that there's two different mechanisms going on here. There's the theme. That's one of several plugins, only one of which can be active at once. So if I switch themes, then the other themes get switched off. We've also got palettes, and the palettes are stored in another system tiddler called $:/palette, and that has the name of the palette tiddler. It works in the same way. So if I want to edit that to use the rocker palette, I just change what's in that $:/palette tiddler. So Charlie, did that make sense? Great. Okay. So do you wanna let me hand back, and do you wanna keep showing us? You're missing the. I think that by default. Oh, doing it wrong. No, there should be a. You should have a $:/palette tiddler. Oh, you typed it here as $palette, but it's $:/. Okay, and now I'm looking at what you've got in your terminal window. So what I can see is you're running a command called XAP, which it looks like is doing your actual build, and then you've got building docs/TiddlyFoxTiddly as the final step. So you've managed to integrate TiddlyWiki's documentation creation into a wider build process. That's very cool. And now, right, so the end of your build file contains, oh, I thought it was going to see, what do we got? CD, right, you're moving the file around, uploading it, and then launching, if I understand correctly. Is that right? Okay, so don't use, one thing that might not have been obvious is that the file name of a .tid file does not matter. You can give them any file name you like. What matters is the title field given in the body of it. So for instance, if I search for...
Did you unselect, Charlie?
Oh, did I unselect Charlie? No, very good point. Thank you very much. So I was just going to demonstrate how the palette tiddler that is in the core, so this is in the wiki, well, it doesn't matter where it is in the wiki folder. So this is the default value of the palette tiddler, and you can see its title is given as $:/palette, but the file name is just palette.tid. And as I say, the file name is ignored. The title that the tiddler gets is the title specified within the file. Oh, Ton's off. Cheers, Ton. Glad you're able to join us.
Jeremy, I think that non-correspondence between file names and title names and the fact that those special system title names kind of look like file names causes more people more confusion when starting to dig into internals of TiddlyWiki than really almost anything else.
Maybe. I mean, there's a couple of things we can unpack there. I mean, one of the the obvious solution is to make it so that the tiddler file name does become the title, and then the problem we immediately crash is that we want to have tiddlers that contain titles.
Yeah.
That have titles with characters that don't make good file names. So it's I don't really see a good way around it. The fact that they look like file names, the $:/, is intentional, of course. It's supposed to evoke the idea of a URL or of a file path because we want to make the mass of system tiddlers less imposing by using the prefixes in the titles as the basis for a hierarchical display. So, don't know. I mean, I take your point that there's some confusion, but I don't know. I mean, it's so difficult, this area, because
Yeah.
here we've got examples of how it works, so you can inspect the code, and we've got documentation. So I guess this is really what you're asking, Nathan. When one's in a situation where neither documentation nor examples are sufficient, what does one do? And I think we're almost always in that situation, because I think very few people look at documentation, and I think very few people bother to look at code. So the challenge becomes, how do you make something like TiddlyWiki without breaking people's expectations? And of course, that's also, I think, difficult, because TiddlyWiki is kind of doing some unusual things. I mean, people who are just thinking about jQuery sort of approaches, you kind of you wouldn't do TiddlyWiki in the same way if that was the only tool that you had.
Jeremy, I think the way as TiddlyWiki 5 is at the moment is because the TiddlyWiki Classic had to go through several iterations with all those problems, and TiddlyWiki 5 already assumes that let's say most of the
well, it certainly doesn't assume that you need to know TiddlyWiki Classic to use.
No, but TiddlyWiki Classic had the same problems, and the solutions.
Oh, I see. So in order to understand the design, in order to understand the rationale for the design, it certainly helps to
And I think it would get even worse if you have TiddlyWeb in the background as a backend. Because with TiddlyWeb, well, let's say TiddlySpace, with TiddlySpace there was the public and private stuff introduced, and you need something like namespacing. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
And
well, let's continue with Charlie's question. So Charlie's saying it's up there with $:palette.tid. So I'm afraid that's wrong as well. It's the file name that needs .tid. The tiddler title doesn't have .tid in it. So it looks like, I mean, as I say, I would call your tiddler just theme.tid and avoid entirely having the illegal. Oh, I see. Right. So you've got symbols in the JSON, and you're using those to create both the title and the file name. Okay. So you need to map those strings that you've got in JSON that identify those items. Obviously, you can use those directly as titles, but you're going to have to massage them before you use them as file names, because basically you've written an application that's trying to use characters that are inconvenient in file names, and the workaround is to not put those characters in file names, if that makes sense. So let me show you what, remembering to screen share. So TiddlyWiki has the same problem, in fact. So when in the client server mode, when we get a new tiddler coming from the browser that the server needs to save, it needs to generate a file name for it. And it can't use the title as the file name, because the title might contain characters that are illegal in file names. So, trying to remember where the code is, which is not something that I always get right.
I think it's actually in the file system adapter, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, sorry, of course. That's exactly where I thought I was and wasn't. Thank you very much, Nathan. So, somewhere here, generate tiddler file name. What we're doing here, Charlie, is we replace all of the dodgy characters with an underscore, and then we check if the result is unique, and if it's not unique, we add a number onto the end. So, I mean, you could easily devise, I'm sure, a mapping that would be more suitable for your application, but I think that's roughly the approach. Or to be honest, if your file names don't matter, you could just create the file names as 0.tid, 1.tid, etc., and not worry about the human readability of the file names. Does that make sense?
He's saying in chat the file names don't matter.
Great, yeah. So that would be my suggestion, is that you'd auto-generate numerical file names, stick with the correct tiddler titles within the TID files. Charlie, does that help? Let me switch to your terminal window. Okay, you're rebuilding it, so hopefully it'll work.
And another way that you could get easy human readable file names, if that is a requirement, is to start by generating them just with numerical names or whatnot, and then actually run the wiki through the client server edition and let it save the tiddlers back out with the title-based file names. That's something I've done myself in the past quite a bit in importing data sets.
Well, I must say it would be helpful if our JSON import wasn't broken. We talked about this last week, but I think for a lot of this stuff, for me, I'd find JSON the most convenient way, and then at least you can manage a whole load of tiddlers in one operation.
Jeremy, can you let Chris back in?
Chris, sorry. So now I'm just looking at palette.tid. Yeah, both those look all right now, Charlie, to me. They don't need to have a tags field, but I mean, it doesn't matter. But it looks like you're giving them an empty tags field. I don't think you need to.
It shouldn't hurt anything.
No, just might make it look like there's a mistake. Oh, the file is up now and it doesn't display the theme. Okay, so let me, am I screen sharing? Yeah, let me refresh Charlie's. So your palette is set to palettes blue, and that seems to be working. If I edit it to vanilla, ooh, that doesn't look right. There was yes, it looks like you got a line break after the name of the palette, and I imagine this will be the same with theme. So if I go into the theme, yeah, get rid of that line break. You've now switched to the vanilla theme.
Yeah, I've bumped into that too.
Yes, it's really annoying, and it's one of those. As I understand it, lots of editors and source code control systems don't like the idea of a file without a carriage return at the end. We absolutely need people to create tiddlers that do not have a line break at the end, and for them to be able to retrieve it, and for it still to not have a line break. So on the face of it, that means that we'd need to ignore the last line break in a .tid file, and that in turn seems like it's going to be horrendously confusing for the people who've typed a line break at the end of the TID file and expect it to be respected.
I blame Windows Notepad for creating that whole paradigm years ago.
Yes, yes. Really annoying though. Yes, in fact it is. It's possibly even Microsoft's fault, because if we didn't have bloody carriage return line feed confusion, none of this madness would kill us in the same way. I like the fact that we're watching Charlie compile and upload, and it's still got a line break at the end. As the other text editor that likes adding line breaks. Yeah, so that's the challenge. You're gonna edit it in hex to remove the line.
I would just say he should edit it in hex and then it should work.
That's brilliant. Oh, okay. ghex is a graphical editor that we can't see happening, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Aha. Well done.
Now it should work.
Never mind pair programming. This is octopus programming.
Oh, not quite. There's only 6 of us now, so.
Yes, hexa programming. That sounds a bit Harry Potter-esque, doesn't it? So, Charlie, I hope, yay, brilliant. Well, I'm sorry that was a bit, as ever, if it must feel like walking around through a dark cave and hitting your head on things, and I'm helpfully standing behind you saying, oh yes, watch out for the bar that you've just hit your head on. So I apologise for the head injuries ensuing from that process, but very pleased.
It's funny, I was just about to make a joke about how many TiddlyWiki developers does it take to screw in a light bulb?
Yes. Or how many TiddlyWiki developers does it take to screw up something? I was going to urge you, Charlie, I think it would be really terrific, or I look forward to when you're able to share your work, because it so successfully hits, 3, 4 of my interests. So it's about TiddlyWiki, it's about the 6502, it's about the Commodore PET, and it's about Forth. So I urge you to share it in the group. Are you happy for me to tweet this, by the way, Charlie? I mean, yes, if it was private, you'd have made it. Yeah, great, awesome. So, what's the best project front page to send people to? GitHub, something or other. Did it have a link? Yes. So this is where I should point people, I guess, yeah? A Commodore PET emulator. So does it, I assume it supports all those crazy poke commands that I remember dimly that used to make peculiar things appear on the screen. Aha! We also have a Tumblr blog. Oh, great. Oh, Charlie, this is great. I'm really pleased to see you sharing so much. I'll have great pleasure in sharing this with my fellow Forth maniacs. I'm surprised that you haven't suggested that we rewrite TiddlyWiki as a Forth interpreter. It's a jolly attractive idea. Yes, it blows the doors off of anything else from the 80s. Yes, I would sincerely hope so. I fear that my work on Forth was, well, yeah, performance wasn't uppermost in my mind, I'm sure. Okay, so we're drawing towards the end, but not at the end.
Jeremy, you need to unselect Charlie.
Oh yeah, thank you. Dave, you were very kindly going to show us something, which it's a long time, and I'd be very interested to see what you've been coming up with. I guess it's going to be tidmarks. Charlie, thank you as well. It's very good to be reminded of those low-hanging beams, and I'd say watching somebody go through what I've just seen you go through just increases my resolve to make sure that nobody else has to go through it. But Dave, is this a good time for you to share?
Oh, sure. Let me screen share here.
Okay, I'm just going to step away from the microphone for 1 second whilst you're getting yourself set up.
All right. Can you see the screen now? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to organize my bookmarks on TiddlyWiki. And usually when I start tinkering with TiddlyWiki, it's because I have some kind of use case that, you know, something I want, and then I work it, and then I say, you know, I think I'll share it with other people. So I came up with I called it tidmarks just for fun, but this is kind of the version with examples on it that I'm using, and I'm on the online version right now. And basically what I did was I hacked part of the tag template thing so that you can choose either between the tiddler or opening the website. So I can open the website just with a link like that. And I mean, there's not really too much more to it than that. If you open the tiddler, then you get the link in the text field, and there's a description in case you want to add your own little notes or whatever to it. And let me go to trying to remember what to, oh, that's right. So I have all my tags in one with some instructions, playing around with these great little table of contents menus. And then I also have all my indexes. Indexes are just basically the same thing, but in a tiddler for longer lists and that, so I can just click on, you know. And this has been a great week for TiddlyWiki, eh? Not only with Daniello's scholarly TiddlyWiki, but also Matabili, or I'm not sure how to say it, but oh, I got the wrong. I've got the wrong link on there. I think I forgot to add the link to that one, but I'll do that later. But all the nice new plugins and widgets that Matabili's been doing, it's been pretty neat to see.
That's in GWYS, yeah?
Yeah, I can go to it this way.
Oh, an organized man.
And I love the side thing. That's really great. And these widgets are pretty cool. So I'm pretty happy with that. The other thing I wanted to show you guys is something I don't have online, but it's something I've been messing around with in the last couple of days. Basically, note-taking, TiddlyWiki, and what I wanted to show you was the I created like a note list thing, and I just have a date stamp in there, but I can just leave it like that, I guess. And then that doesn't look very impressive, but then when I create a note from it and change tiddler title, I can just add that, and I've got a source field just for me, the other thing, and it looks like that. Then close it and go back to the note list, and it appears like with a shadow box, and it's got the text in it. And if I want to go back to the note, I just click on the blue arrow, and it takes me to the tiddler. And if I go, if I want to create a new image for it, let's grab a picture of my family here, copy the image location, go back and pop it in, and save it, and then go back to the file. So it just looks really nice for me. I like that. It helps me organize, because I tend to organize note lists on a topic in little chunks or with images or whatever, and so that works great for me. And I tinkered around with the page control tabs, and I got rid of the regular search and just kind of put two different search things. I've got the context search, is I think this one. Or no, that's the advanced search, and then the context search is this one. So I wanted to have I really like, because I use the date time and date stamps, calling up the tiddler titles really doesn't help me that much. So I wanted to have the context search directly available from the front screen, so at all times. So I put that up.
Can you bring up one of your lists again?
What's that?
Notes. Can you bring up one of the lists of notes again?
Sure.
So it seems as though one of the things that's going on here that I think is very interesting is you've got sub-items, if I can call them that one of the distinctions is that they don't have titles. That instead of having a title, they've got a parent-child relationship within the container. Well, I mean, you could display them in multiple containers, but in the primary container that you're displaying them in. Does that accord with how you'd see it?
Yeah, I basically want it as a, basically, normally what it would be is a topic, like, you know, productivity or something. Yeah. And then this would be a list of notes about productivity. Mm-hmm. And the reason that I like it this way is that, you know, there's times where I'm focused on a topic and things, but there's other times where I just see something in a book on a topic that I'm not really dealing with, and I want to save it, and but I want to have it show up somewhere too, you know. Yeah. And so that's kind of the idea. So well, basically, the idea. Go ahead.
Sorry, Dave. Go
on. The other thing I have then is I have all my indexes here. Basically, this is well, I can show you the code here. It's basically a list filter of the tags that are not system tags and not shadow tags. And then what happens is then if I've got if I add a note, a tag, it'll show up here. And then I can just create an index with this new index button and call it toolbar or image or whatever. And then I've got an index, and that index will be, you know, that one there. So.
It reminds me a little of something that I think I've talked about before, which is, by which I don't mean the TV series, even though I did enjoy the TV series. So this is Dave Weiner's, I keep doing this, I'm in the wrong browser that I'm not signed into Dropbox in. So if I connect the app to Dropbox, if I haven't already, looks like I maybe have already. Okay, so it's an outliner. You use double-clicking to expand and collapse things. I very firmly believe that although outlining is a useful way to see structures, I think it's useless as the dominant structure. So I like the way that we can pull hierarchies like this out of TiddlyWiki without constraining users of TiddlyWiki to use a strict hierarchy for all of their content. But the thing that's always struck me about when you work in hierarchies, and I do actually frequently, fairly often work with much more conventional outlines, is that you don't have to come up with a title. So the cognitive load of starting a new tiddler is actually quite high, because as well as jotting down, you know, you said I've got something I just want to jot down quickly, so that should just be Control-V. But one also has to think of a title. Now, of course, in classic TiddlyWiki, I think of the journal feature as being the workaround for that you hit new journal and you're just guaranteed that you're going to get a title. You don't need to think about it. The title, reasonably helpfully, is going to help you locate what you wrote by time, at least. But all of this makes me think it would be nice to have something similar actually built into TiddlyWiki. So like a sub-story mode where just pretty much actually as you've got, but where we make it super easy to type consecutive tiddler bodies and have the titles automatically created. So I think that's a big vote for what you've done there, Dave.
Yeah, I was looking at Fargo. I like the hierarchical part, which, you know, there's times where you really want that, but then I couldn't figure out how to actually have like the tiddler text part be in there. I mean, because it was always with the expand and collapse and so forth, and I just didn't, it didn't appeal to me visually, the Fargo model. This gives me, it does, like the notes in a topic are not very organized, you know, they're not in any kind of order, so I'd have to go and change the tiddler titles to reorder them, I guess, but just for capturing my ideas very quickly, this is going to be a great system. So
yeah, no, very good to see. Very good to see.
And I have stuff too, the parent categories and the the subcategories and the new here buttons. Played around with Matabelli's Make Tid widget, but I ended up going back to Stefan's new Tiddler widget because I couldn't get it to work exactly the way I wanted to. So seems like there was something else on here that I was going to show you guys, but well, anyway, the indexes are there. I've also got in I thought I had one with all my tags, but I guess not. But anyway, this is just helpful. Oh, the other thing I was going to show you was for the tag name, I've kind of hacked that to be able to see it wider, because when it's just one long column, it goes off the page really quickly. It can be kind of a pain. So I wanted to be able to see more of the tags, but of course, it reduces down quickly, so that's pretty handy. I've been playing around a little bit, even though I haven't been on the Hangouts. I have been messing around with TiddlyWiki quite a bit and finding it more and more useful all the time. One thing that would be kind of cool, getting back to the bookmarks thing, is if we could ever get something like TiddlySnip for TiddlyWiki 5.
Yes. I would like to do TiddlySnip as part of TiddlyFox, and I would like to do TiddlySnip as part of TiddlyDesktop. With TiddlyDesktop, there is a chance that we can do global system-wide keyboard shortcuts for capturing anything, which I think would be incredibly useful. It also, so to me, when I bookmark a page, what I would really like is to save the URL, to save a bitmap of what the page looks like at the moment, along with a timestamp, and yeah, those two things. Oh, and possibly a chunk of text that I had selected on the page at the time when I clicked the bookmark thing. So that's 3 separate items that I think are useful. Visual bookmarking, being able to see a mosaic grid of all of your bookmark previews, I think would be quite handy.
Yeah, you want to become Pinterest, huh?
Yeah, I may have mentioned in the past that one of the things that's interesting about TiddlyDesktop to me is that it can do thumbnails. So I use that at the moment in the TiddlyDesktop main window, where we get a thumbnail of each TiddlyWiki file. But as I say, we could use the same technique to thumbnail arbitrary pages that we're bookmarking. Awesome. So we should, or I at any rate, need to close. Let me turn off screen sharing. I need to close in a couple of minutes. So any other comments or thoughts from anybody?
Just the question of what you're going to be working on in the next week, and when the version 14 is going to be out.
So my plan now is I've got a little bit more finishing off to do of the upgrade stuff, and let me just do a build to show you one thing. I've updated the roadmap tiddler rather radically. So the roadmap tiddler now says we're done. We just got polish. And now I'm saying more specifically we're going to do the full release in September at TiddlyWiki's 10th anniversary. I've kept the list of tasks that had been in the roadmap. These are all things that at various times we have discussed as being okay to leave until after the beta. And the criteria there is that there's no reason why any of these should break compatibility. Well, I'm sure you can all see that those have the capacity to break backwards compatibility in some contexts, but not for end users. So now, therefore, what I want to do is get 14 out in the next week or so. That would be just a little bit better than we've recently managed, where it's been about 4 weeks per release. So I want everybody to get a chance to try out the upgrade stuff. I'll be doing some other little bits of polish. So there's a few things that I've mentioned before a few times, like finalizing the character sequences that qualify as an automatic wiki link. So a few little bits and pieces like that that I might try and get into 14, or maybe they'll go for 15. And then with any luck, that'll be... Oh, I just realized that... yeah, with any luck, that'll be, the 15th now, so it'll be about the 20th. And then maybe we'll do 2 releases in August, have 15 and 16 in August, and then middle of September or so, 16 or 17 or something would be the final release. But over those, as we move into August, I'm going to move into the mode where a number of changes I'll say, no, let's not do it till after we're out of beta. So I'll be trying hard to avoid rocking the boat over this next 6 weeks or so, putting the emphasis on A, the things that must be done before we get out of beta, and B, the kind of spit and polish things. And a big part of the time that I've got now before the release, I think I need to spend on documentation as well.
Have you thought about doing some promotional and not just documentation, but like more tutorials and so forth before the final release, or the full release?
Would love to. I'll certainly do more screencasts, because I know, I can do those reasonably competently and they're not too expensive. Whether I'll be able to do any writing other than the writing that I've got to do, I'm not so sure. I mean, I must be careful what I commit to, mustn't I? Especially with my track record.
Thanks,
but Dave, I mean, it's this. You remember when we were talking I don't know, 9 months ago? This is the time to start your TiddlyWiki 5 guide.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Or to pick it up again. Okay. There's a question from Charlie. Issue is titling tiddlers with square brackets in. Yes, it's a nightmare. It's worth knowing that there are some situations where square brackets are fine, particularly as widget attributes. It's only when you use them in wikitext syntax that it's a problem. So let me show you what I mean. If I create here, if I try and create a link, let's create a tiddler called Jeremy with double square brackets at the end, okay? And then that works, but now I'll try and create a link to it. Oops. And not surprisingly, that doesn't, it links to a tiddler called Jeremy. But if I use the link widget instead, which you can think of as a lower level bit of syntax, then, and close the thing, then it didn't work. Well, okay, so I'll check why it didn't work, but that should have worked. But the fact that it doesn't work suggests that I should be careful in making assertions before I've checked them. The main response to that, Charlie, is that we've had considerable discussion about the type of escaping that would be necessary to enable those characters to be used in tiddler titles. The observation is that I think it's rather like pushing down on a bit of lino that then pops up somewhere else, that you then create a burden for everybody who wants to use another bunch of characters that now have to be escaped that didn't have to be before. So it's an open question, and maybe there's something that we can do better. I certainly don't think. Well, we could respect HTML encoded entities or HTML entities in a tiddler title, but it's very questionable whether that's the least surprising general purpose behavior. But it's certainly possible to write one's own view template that does that, that does the HTML decoding. Charlie's also saying it would be, where do I find style collections documentation? Everything that there is on TiddlyWiki.com or linked on the community Tiddler on TiddlyWiki.com. And you're talking about a way to embed pesky graphics in there. I assume that's some kind of ASCII graphics using the Commodore PET's weird character set. So that should be fine. We can embed fonts in TiddlyWiki, so to the extent that you can get a true type font or something of those pesky characters, yes, I think we can get that done. Mark says, have you thought of implementing a subtitle field? Absolutely. Well, what I want is for the TiddlyWiki core to formalize the minimum possible set of fields, but to make it easy for end users to create and extend their own fields if they need them. And so things like a description field or a subtitle would be exactly that kind of thing. And of course, adding a subtitle pretty much is just adding a segment to the view template. It's pretty straightforward to do.
Jeremy, the link, maybe it's link to?
The what, sir?
Link widget that didn't work.
Oh. Thank you very much, Mario. So Jeremy doesn't remember his own attribute names, which is suggested.
I did have a look
too. Needs to hint us.
I did have a look at TiddlyWiki.com.
Oh. Yes, well, sometimes that stuff seems logical.
So I think we need an editor which does some help.
Yes.
Autocomplete.
Guys, so I must buzz off now, but as usual, we'll wave goodbye and stay on the line for a minute. But I wanted to say a big thank you to you for joining me today. Great session, wonderful to have so many people here. Really enjoyed the feedback. As always, it's incredibly useful for me to hear so directly from people. Charlie, as I said, couldn't be happier that you brought to the party such a combination of well-loved things for me, and I shall enjoy looking through all that material later on. But for the moment, guys, thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you next week for the Hangout next week. So I'll press the stop broadcast button there. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.